In the year 2150, the city of Silencia was a marvel of order, but it was built on a suffocating foundation. The supreme governing body had decided decades ago that noise was the root of all chaos. To maintain order, they decided to enact a strict charter known as the Quietude Constitution. Under this law, every citizen was bound by a solemn obligation to minimize sound. Ilera Vance was a high-ranking official in the Department of Auditory Control. Her job was usually administrative. She would coordinate schedules and ensure departments would cooperate to maintain the city's decibel levels. However, Ilera was secretly tired of the constraint placed upon her life. The regulation regarding speech was simple. Unnecessary noise was illegal. To whisper was risky. To mutter in frustration was a finable offense. To shout was a crime. The city operated on a default setting of silence. Most citizens chose to remain mute rather than risk breaking a protocol. But one day, a shocking item appeared on Ilera's desk. It was a file marked Priority Alpha. A young man named Kalen had been arrested. He wasn't just accused of talking, he was accused of daring to perform a song in the public square. In Silencia, music was not a form of art. It was a forbidden act that the government would strictly sanction.
Ilera was assigned to investigate the case before it went to trial. She went to the detention center, a place so quiet the air felt heavy. She met Kalen, who sat calmly in his cell. "Why did you do it?" Ilera asked, her voice barely above the standard legal decibel limit. "You know the criteria for a Class A felony. You openly violated the norm." Kalen looked up. "I did not create noise, Ilera. I created harmony. Is there a law that says the human soul cannot express itself?" "The statute is clear," Ilera replied, trying to stay professional. "The mandatory sentencing for singing is 5 years of isolation. The police will accuse you of inciting chaos. They will prosecute you to the fullest extent." Kalen smiled sadly. "I do not deny the act. It is an admission of guilt regarding the action. But I reject the idea that it was wrong. I will not enter a plea of regret." Ilera felt a strange pull. Usually, she would condemn such behavior. But Kalen's voice was potent. It carried a vibration she hadn't felt in years. She realized she couldn't just process him like paperwork. She wanted to help him. But to do that, she would have to collaborate with him, and perhaps work against the very system she served. Ilera decided to take a risk. She would represent Kalen. To do this, she had to find a loophole in the treaty between the citizens and the state. She spent nights poring over every legal document, looking for an agreement or a forgotten clause that might allow for artistic expression. She found a dusty, ancient protocol from the founding of the city. It stated that sounds of reasonable nature utilized to mediate conflict or express equity shall be permitted. It was thin, but it was a benchmark she could use. "We need to prove your song was reasonable," Ilera told Kalen. "We must justify it as necessary for mental health. If we can prove the current silence causes prejudice against human nature, we might have a chance." "You want to argue that silence is a form of discrimination against the human spirit?" Kalen asked. "Exactly," Ilera said. "If the state enforces silence to the point of madness, it is not fair. It is not just. We will sue the state for emotional damages if they refuse to listen." It was a dangerous strategy. The public might boycott the trial, fearing association with a rebel. Or worse, the controversy could destroy Ilera's career. But she was determined. She had to persuade the judges. The day of the trial arrived. The court was packed, yet eerily silent. The session began with the bang of a gavel, the only loud sound allowed. The prosecutor, a stern man named Director Holloway, began his opening statement. He sought to enforce the strict letter of the law. This man, Holloway pointed at Kalin, chose to contradict our way of life. He broke the permit of peace. We have a witness who heard the melody from 3 blocks away. This is not a murmur. This was a sonic assault. Holloway called his witness, a nervous woman who claimed the music caused her distress.
I heard him, she whispered on the stand. It wasn't a whisper. It was loud. I wanted to complain, but I was too shocked.
Elara stood up. Objection. The witness implies distress, but is it not true that the standard for distress is subjective? The judge, a hologram representing the supreme authority, flickered. Overruled. Proceed. Elara knew the deck was stacked. The system was designed to reject anomaly, but she had a plan. When it was Elara's turn, she didn't focus on the item of evidence, the recording of the song. Instead, she focused on the concept of equity. Your Honor, Elara began, her voice steady. We are bound by laws, yes, but laws must serve the people. When a regulation becomes a chain, it is no longer protection, it is oppression. My client's admission is not of a crime, but of a need. She turned to the audience. We legislate silence to keep the peace. But look at us. We are afraid to murmur a greeting. We are afraid to contradict a neighbor. Is this a fair society? Or is it a prison? Holloway jumped up. She is trying to legislate her from the bench. She is trying to create a new norm. This is controversy for the sake of anarchy. No, Elara countered. I am asking for admission of a simple truth. Absolute silence is prejudice against life itself. The courtroom buzzed. A low sound, like a collective mutter, rose from the gallery. The judge banged the gavel. Order, or I will sanction everyone in this room. Elara looked at Kalin. It was time for the final move. They had planned this. Kalin stood up. He wasn't going to appeal to their logic anymore. He was going to perform. The defendant will remain silent, Holloway shouted. But Kalin didn't speak. He began to hum. It started as a low vibration, a simple benchmark of sound. It wasn't loud, but in the dead quiet of the room, it was incredibly potent. The guards moved to restrain him, but the sound was not aggressive. It was beautiful. It was a melody that seemed to mediate the tension in the room. The people in the gallery didn't boycott the moment. They leaned in. They didn't condemn him. They listened. For a full minute, the court was filled with a human sound that wasn't a complaint or a command. It was art. When Kalin stopped, the silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty. It was heavy with emotion. The verdict took hours. The judges had to coordinate with the city council. The strict criteria of the law demanded punishment, but the public reaction made it impossible to simply lock Kalin away. Finally, the hologram returned. The defendant is found guilty of violating the charter, the judge announced. Elara's heart sank. However, the judge continued, the court recognizes that the strict enforcement of the silence standard has created an undue constraint on the populace. While we cannot permit total noise, we will allow a new protocol. The judge looked at Kalin. Your sentence is suspended. Instead, you are to help us legislate a new zone, a sonic garden, where music is permitted under a specific permit. We will enact a trial period. It wasn't a total victory. The law was still there. But the boycott of sound had ended. Kalin and Elara had managed to persuade the unpersuadable.
As they walked out of the court, the city was still quiet, but it felt different. It wasn't a default silence anymore. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. A sound that was reasonable, fair, and for the first time in a century, completely legal.